Fire Emblem, invented in 1990 by Shozo Kaga. Kaga looked back on the video games of the 80s and thought, why the hell are there so many dumb baby games? Pac-Man, Pole Position, Galaga, Frogger, Tetris. Where are all the games that put the turmoil of life on display? The games that accurately depict the horror of the human condition? You could argue that Frogger accomplishes this, but that's really the only one. Enter Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, a game all about the horrors of war and persevering through literally the worst thing that could ever happen to you, which is meta as fuck, because that's an allegory for playing Fire Emblem in itself. You see, Fire Emblem is my favorite video game series of all time, and like any Fire Emblem fan, I absolutely hate it. But it's not as if I'm suffering alone. Fire Emblem in recent years has exploded in popularity and has become one of Nintendo's many money-printing machines. And with 3 houses being released soon, or maybe having been already released depending on how little effort I put into getting this video out on time, I figure now is as good a time as any to share my very finite knowledge with all you newer fans so you can fully understand the suffering that paved the way for you. Because, believe it or not, Fire Emblem wasn't always about matchmaking and gambling. There was a time when it was about matchmaking and pain. Okay, real quick, for people watching this who don't know much about Fire Emblem, let's run through the story. Fire Emblem is an anthology series. It's a bunch of different stories that are at most loosely connected to each other. Think American Horror Story or Black Mirror, except it's the same story every time. You play as a teenager of notable heritage, or a self-insert, or both. Here's your mom, a kind, loving woman who thinks the world of you. She's dead. Here's your dad, a great, noble warrior respected everywhere he goes. He's dead. You live a relatively normal, peaceful life in your hometown Ram Ranch, until one day some guy or girl dressed in all red decides they're gonna start fucking shit up. So you and your 3 friends go on an adventure to stop him, picking up other misfits and social rejects along the way, resembling that group of teens from Return of the Living Dead. Containing you, your childhood friend, best girl, the person who doesn't want to be there, the guy with the mask, the person who can solo the whole game making every other character optional, the furry, the 2 color-coded units so you can remember which has which personality, the person you won't reset for if they die, the young girl with a heal staff who dies if an enemy looks at her too hard, the old guy who's unusable after chapter 3, the old guy who's only usable for the last 3 chapters, the young mage who sucks, the older mage who's hype, the axe boys! The person from the enemy's army who's riding a dragon has incredible stats, and even though they joined kinda late into the game, they're still really useful. You start to notice real specific patterns after you play for a while. On the way to fuck up that person who's ruining everything, you discover dragons are behind this whole mess. Some of them are otherworldly monstrosities hell-bent on destroying the universe, others are 12-year-old girls who join your group, meaning your band of thieves and murderers is currently outmatched. In order to stand a chance, your group needs to locate the Thing.
The Thing?
Yeah, the Thing. It's like, really important, it gives you a fighting chance against the big bad dragon. Yeah, it has a name. Fuck, what's it called? It's, The Fire Emblem, that's what it's called. Your group needs to find the Fire Emblem. Sometimes it's a rock, sometimes it's a shield, sometimes it's a necklace your sister's been carrying around the entire fucking game and just neglected to tell anybody. Sometimes it's a Lancer assault rifle, sometimes it's your main character's birthmark. It really doesn't matter, it's all the same. You take the Fire Emblem, you take your friends, you go find the dragon, you beat the shit out of him until he's dead. Congratulations, the world is now saved. Now then, this here is a professional grade graph that we'll be using over the course of this video. Across the bottom is a timeline with each Fire Emblem release, and we're going to use the y-axis to measure difficulty and waifu-y over time. Let's start at the beginning with the first 5 games in the series, known as the Boomer Era. This era greatly emphasized difficulty over waifu-y. Not to say waifus weren't present at all, Genealogy was way ahead of its time, being the first Fire Emblem with matchmaker mechanics decades before it became a series staple. And if you squint hard enough, you can probably make out a cute girl in this mess of pixels. And also, not to say that these games are impossible. It's still Fire Emblem, it's just chess mixed with some rock, paper, scissors playing against an opponent who has clearly never played either. No, the difficulty in these games comes from their quirks. Like your healers being able to miss, every armored unit getting left behind by the rest of your team on these fuck-huge maps, love being as convoluted and difficult to understand as it is in real life. Okay, so in most Fire Emblem games, if 2 units are next to each other when one of them fights an enemy, they gain some love points between each other. Just like in real life, being near someone while going through a traumatic experience strengthens your romantic bond with them, which is why you have to be very wary about the seating arrangement when watching a horror movie with your friends. But in these games, there's a little more to it than that. If 2 people are beside each other, then they gain love points with each other. But if you have a third person adjacent to one of the original 2, they steal the love points that would go to the one they're beside. If you arrange them in a square, you end up in a love circle that you get to the end, passing around to the end and get those love points from each other, despite being 40 meters away from the built-up love points and immediately falls complicated on one of the 2 other adjacent characters gives you some trash tier units later on instead. style may or may not be if you have a specific particular time, and may or may not be. I hope you paid attention. If you don't settle down with your game, you're fucking an idiot. Like the main lord might just fuck you from under you a quarter of the way through the game in this love points minigame. If they don't, their mount creates a species barrier that the love points can't cross. Honestly, if you want to play these games, your best bet is to play the remakes. They keep some of the quirks that make them unique, but overall, they're just better. We move into the Game Boy Advanced era. It was during this time that the Fire Emblem game, which popularized the series with a wider audience, was released. Super Smash Bros. Melee, starring Marth and Roy, two sword boys from Fire Emblem who were the first in a long line of FE sword boys to join the Smash cast. Over the course of this era, the difficulty started to decline as there was no longer a death-obsessed genius madman running the series, and the series was getting more and more popular in the West, which the Japanese developers figured was filled with less epic gamers overall. We also see a major jump in waifui with the introduction of Lyn in Fire Emblem 7. Fire Emblem would maintain similar levels of waifui for quite a while. Before we jump into the games of the 3D era, we have to ask ourselves a question. Which Fire Emblem game is the best? As with any series that's older than its target demographic, the game someone claims is the best is usually just the one they played first, which is why you're likely to run into a lot of people who eagerly claim that Awakening or Fates is the best one. Don't listen to them. They're well-meaning but quite misinformed.
You said it.
Listen to me instead. Path of Radiance is the best Fire Emblem game. It has the best lore with some of the best villains, a fantastic supporting cast of characters, and takes the series in a direction it had never gone before. Instead of an evil guy and an eviler dragon, the main villain of this game is bureaucracy and racism. And also an evil guy and his dragon, but mostly racism. It's a top tier game, 10 out of 10, would play again for the 17th time. And then there was its sequel, moving on to the DS era, aka Boomer era V2. I got nothing on this time period. No one played these games. That's just how it be. And finally, onto the time period most of you are likely familiar with, the modern era. Leading into this era, the Fire Emblem series was on its deathbed, given one more chance by Nintendo to make it worthwhile to not pull the plug. It was here the Fire Emblem name was saved thanks to a dating simulator and a gacha game. A fate arguably worse than death. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm not that much of a salty old head. I'm very glad my favorite game series is not only surviving, but thriving. I love seeing the glow in newer fans' eyes when they talk about their favorite characters, or who they're going to S rank for their 9th playthrough, and I've moved past the mindset that people who play on casual should be put into camps. I can now tolerate them for minutes at a time. Now looking towards the future, or the past, depending on how late this video is, I'm quite excited for Three Houses. San Andreas is my favorite GTA game, so I know quite a bit about how to maneuver through a gang war. And you know, the Game of Thrones houses... Homes? Houses. The Game of Thrones houses had a collab with Adidas, the Harry Potter houses had a collab with the Vans, so I'm looking forward to the Three Houses collab with Air Jordan. And now a word from some of my patrons. Eitzkodal. Fire Emblem Three Houses is so promising and exciting, it almost makes me forget the actual real-ass motherfucking life horror of global warming that will take place if no action is done against it. Almost. Daz. Fire Emblem is awful, it's the worst JRPG going. If you like it, you probably like Dick and Balls too, hoes mad. Messiah.complex. If we're going to have another Fire Emblem character for Smash, and it has to be another sword boy, why not Kaze? His blades are on his arms and he has knives in hand, so it's kinda not really a sword boy. I guess it kinda just makes him a clone of Sheik, but a guy. But give me a break, I'm trying. Please, Sakurai. Seba S. Bob, and it all changed when the Fire Emblem attacked. To be honest, I know nothing about this series. Get out of here, you weebs. The Real Young Cashew, and it all changed when the Fire Emblem attacked. To be honest, I know nothing about this series. Get out of here, you weebs.